Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Australian Human Rights Commission. In fact, looking around, we have a few regulars, I can say. Welcome again to the Australian Human Rights Commission. As you know, we meet on the traditional land of the Gadigal people of the Eora, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. Well, today is a pretty exciting one for me as Age Discrimination Commissioner, and I think for many of you here, because we have as our guest the most distinguished and most admired Senior Australian of the Year, Professor Gordian Fulde. And like many of you, I was thrilled when I saw in the paper that Gordian had been given this award, most deservedly, because I had only ever seen him on TV, but I had become a great TV fan of yours, Dr. Fulde, because, first of all, I love seeing doctors and medical people who can communicate to the rest of us who don't have that training. That is in itself fabulous, but also because I admire very much what we as Australians, not just as we get older, but all our lives, how well served we are by our great public hospitals and our emergency departments and the staff and the nurses and the surgeons and the doctors. I mean, we really are most fortunate when we look around the rest of the world and realise who we've got to look after us and how well they do it. We can only say, you know, how lucky are we to be in Australia at this time. I won't emulate the Prime Minister and say it's the very best time to be in Australia, for some of you. I hope it is, but certainly it's a very good time, and it's also a very reassuring time if you happen to find yourself rushed off to St Vincent's emergency, which happened to me a couple of years ago when I broke my ankle. But I wasn't one of those people that Dr. Fulde has to talk about on television. I promise you, it was 9 o'clock in the morning and I'd been delivering a presentation. But really, your work and your advocacy of reducing the harm done by alcohol, I think, strikes a chord with everyone here. We're all very well aware of the terrible things that happen out in the community, in streets, in bars, when people allow themselves to get totally drunk and affected by terrible drugs. We know all that happens, and we also learn, to our horror, that when such people are brought into St Vincent's emergency to be looked after by Dr. Fulde and his team, they often behave in an extremely violent and antisocial and dangerous way as well. So it is a huge problem, despite the seriousness of the problem and the clear links with excessive alcohol consumption and drug consumption, which often go hand in hand. how shall I say, the commercial pressures against restricting people's right to drink whenever, however, how much they want to. The commercial interests who support those rights to continue untramelled are very powerful, very, very powerful. And so, Gordian, I think you are a hero for standing up against them. And of course, I should also say, from the point of view of the Australian Human Rights Commission and individual rights, of course we support people's individual rights in a whole raft of areas. But we also are very well aware that my individual rights or your individual rights need to be balanced against the rights of others. And a person might say, I have a right to drink all night and get completely violent and aggressive and terrible and dangerous. That is my right. We might say, well, you might consider you have such a right, but the rest of us have rights too. And certainly people innocently walking down the street on a night out have rights. Companions of these people have rights not to have their faces slashed, not to be punched. And I would say, especially given the great altruistic and important work they do, the staff in our emergency hospitals have a right to carry out their life-saving and important duties without the interference of violent, aggressive, dangerous people. So I don't want to give your speech for you, Gordian, but but really, this is the reason why I think everyone in this room let out a big cheer when you were appointed as our Senior Australian of the Year. And I and my colleagues here at the Commission, many of whom are present, we cheered even more when we learned that you did accept our invitation to come and talk to us today. So please, Gordian, address your admiring audience on your favourite topic.
Thank you. That's a hard act to follow. All right. Straight into it. Do we have a problem? Right? First of all, as the Commissioner said, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. But I must say that I'm so honoured to be totally surprised to have been nominated for the New South Wales finalist and then win it, and then OMG, Canberra. Wow, you know, it's one of those things I still haven't got into reality with yet. So many people have come up to me since I became SAOTI, Senior Australian of the Year, and said, look, really, really sorry about the senior bit. And I'm going, yeah, okay, but I didn't say it, of course. I don't have a problem with it. I'm fully active. I'm content with my lot. But to me, it shows that there really is still some discrimination versus OPs. It's what my mother-in-law calls herself, an old person. I like OPs. Anyway, King's Cross has always been a source of trouble. It's not ever going to change. It's not going to be heaven on earth. The razor gangs in the 30s, and there'll always be, it was bohemian. It was absolutely ruined by the American armies coming back from Korea and Vietnam, and turned it into a giant brothel. Now, my only real missionary zeal, who here is up to date with their basic life support? That's sad. Commissioner, is you going to do something about that? Now, the life you save with basic life support, if your kids or grandkids, they're probably learning it at school. Life you save is almost certainly going to be somebody you love. Somebody who's close to you, whose house, whose bedrooms you know. Right? So very quickly, this is the thing. It's easy. It's DRS, ABC. Is there any danger that you get into? Then you look at response. I'm a fan of Larson. In other words, if a patient is not responding normally, the patient's in trouble. Right? It really, really is. And the next thing you do is, and the mobile phone has saved so many lives, everybody's got one. You call for the help. 80% of the population of Australia lives in cities and urban areas, so an ambulance is never far away. Airway, for what it's worth, is still the most preventable cause of death outside and inside hospitals. People having a fit, people having unconscious, etc., etc. On the bottom right, you see the lateral position. If you tip them on their side, their tongue falls away from the back of the throat and they can breathe. If they can't breathe, they're dead, even if they're only momentarily unconscious. Breathing, once again, sorry about this slide, but multiple stabbing. But the thing is, if they're not breathing normally, and the only way you can judge that, it's a yes or no thing. And if somebody's in the middle of winter and got a parka, a few jumpers and all that sort of thing, you don't know. So you go straight to C for compression. And let's face it, seeing as the person you know you're going to maybe doing this on, or you should be doing this on, if you're pushing up and down the chest and they politely say, oh, please don't do this, you've done a good thing, right? And if they're less than happy that you did it, you've still done a good thing. So we no longer take pulses. It really is now so simple. And the other thing is, we don't do mouth-to-mouth anymore. You don't have to. There's lots of literature coming through that one of the things you don't really want to do is mouth-to-mouth, even if you know the people. That's not the best thought. So as long as you do chest compressions and do it very quickly, you will probably save a loved one's life. The other thing is defibrillation. There's AEDs, that's automatic external defibrillators everywhere. They're on the planes and crowded places, sports clubs, all those sort of venues. Keep an eye out for them. My dog, who's very stupid, can nearly do it. Well, okay. Why you guys came, other than the food. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through a whole lot of facts and some stats. That's an unconscious patient. We have them all the time, but the thing is now it's so much less. RACP is the Royal Australian College of Physicians, and the quote, the social cost of alcohol misuse in Australia, nice word, misuse, 15 to 36 billion. Healthcare, road accidents, lost productivity. So it's a big problem. Each year, sounds like a massive number because it is, 5,000 deaths attributed to alcohol misuse. That's also chronic use, because people who have dangerous patterns of drinking, they die from it, right? It's not just the teenagers bashing each other's up. And there's a massive amount of hospitalizations. We have some social victories. Australia, it can be so proud because we're amongst one of the countries in the world to do seatbelts. We're part of the worldwide about smoking. That's pretty good. Helmets, when you think of it, helmets now, I mean, people who drive fast cars, sports cars, champion skiers, they all wear helmets. Now it's okay, the skateboarders wear helmets, but bicycles here, and it's the old adage, you know, if you don't need a brain, you don't need a helmet. And RBT, as much as it's a thing that we doctors really don't like, because we're actually an arm of the law, and that sort of interrupts the relationship we have with our patients, because we're doing something that the police wants us to do, but it's a good thing. I looked after this patient myself. He got up to walk again, but he had lots of operations and a crushed pelvis. That's the front of the car. The car just mowed him down. Okay, this is my home, the emergency department, right? And what it's all about is that my duty is to put on the table, from a medical and patient perspective, the emergency department observations, the data and trends as best I can. There is nothing as miserable, really is nothing as miserable as a preventable tragedy. Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's a young person or somebody who steps off the curb and gets hit by a car when they're intoxicated. It really is unimaginably sad. Severe head injury costs society, etc., $12 million. Well, if you think about it, how well could that be spent on so many other things in health? Because we're talking about ICU, we're talking about brain surgery, we're talking about rehab, we're talking about, you know, somebody lost productivity. It's a hell of a lot of money for just one case. Prevention. Prevention is nearly a dirty word. Prevention is allegedly, it's always been taught, for every dollar you spend on prevention, you save $20 downstream. The other thing is about the hard bit about doing it, because that $20 downstream is very hard to identify. That's why people are reluctant to do it. I mean, a very current example, some of you will have caught up with it, some of you won't, but in the UK, well, in Australia, for instance, I heard the other day that there's more obese people than there are skinny people, right? And so in the UK, they've got an obesity tax they want to put through. It's a sugar tax, right? And all that sort of thing. That's prevention. That's how I also learned again that, yeah, Coca-Cola's got about 50 kilos in sugar in it, or something like that. Yeah. That's why it tastes so good. Sorry, some more stats. This is the work I published with Smith and Forster. What it was from Friday night at 6 p.m. to Sunday morning at 6 a.m., we had a 24.8% decrease in critically severely injured patients. Boys will never stop being boys. People won't stop being drunk. The cavemen, as soon as they found some fermenting honey, they got drunk and probably beat each other up. But what has stopped is the really horrible, disabling, nasty violence on the footpaths. And I think that's something which is really a good thing. This is from the Police Bureau of Statistics, Crime and Research. There were 21% less sexual assaults. We have no idea, because of the change in regulations in the first year or so after they came in, what the decrease in domestic violence. I've rarely seen a domestic violence incident where alcohol wasn't involved. That speaks for itself. Once again, there was a marked 60% decrease from the Bosca from alcohol fuel assaults from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Now, the reality is that's what the regulations were trying to achieve, that there weren't these very intoxicated, out of control people roaming the streets in the wee small hours of the morning. Here are more stats from Bosca. In King's Cross, there was a 32%, can't read from here, and then a 40% in the CBD. Good stuff. Less work, less people injured, less people, because I mean, if you just get a slight knock to the head, your brain cells and a little bit of concussion, you have subtle changes which go on for ages. And if you get knocked harder to the head, that also includes sports and all that sort of stuff, you know, that change could nearly, well, it can be permanent. Now, guess what I'm showing there, right? Basically, ladies are being targeted, right? Because unfortunately, ladies used to be so much more sensible than us stupid males. The ladies now have caught up and catching up quickly to the male drinking patterns, but some of that is obviously advertising and all that. There it goes. It's the research from America. Having one drink doubles your risk of going to emergency. After 10 drinks, now that's not hard to do. People going out, schoolboys having 10 beers, and they're well under 18. 10 is on a Saturday night is not a big number, and they've got tenfold risk. A woman's risk after 10 drinks, and remember, ladies usually metabolize alcohol not as fast. It goes up to 14. That's not good risk ratios. Okay, here's some pickies of what we have. That actually is a slash on the right-hand side of the patient's abdomen. Was done with a samurai sword, but yeah, there you go. People under normal thought control don't do stuff like that. This I put there because this is so real. Alcohol is a depressant. And most mornings when I do my ward rounds, there are 2 or 3 people who are suicidal, self-harmed because they've been unhappy. What do? They drink alcohol, that makes you even more depressed, and they really get into a bad spot. So alcohol, it's sort of one of the things where we're only starting to talk about it, but we need to talk about it a lot more. And that includes young people. We think young people are bulletproof. They can go to the beach and chase whatever, boys or girls, whatever they want to chase. But there's a heap of depression out there, and alcohol makes it really dangerous. That's after school formal, probably. Don't know. There's obviously those who are spot on can pick what's wrong with that picture. The steering wheel's on the wrong side. Okay. You have another 5 minutes of my talk for that. Now, and the other thing that happens, right, is when people are not able to judge or take good decisions, they get run over. You know, they're going for a taxi. Yes, that's a problem. Transport out of, drinking places, entertainment precincts. We definitely haven't got it anywhere near right. And that's one of the problems with the 3 o'clock AM closing and letting people out again. But they just don't judge. And before you know it, our cities are getting more cars, drivers are getting much more impatient. It was all based on the Newcastle, project, what they call it. It was wildly successful because the hoteliers, the people, the community all got together. Everybody ever been Hunter Street in the old days? It was a zoo. It was a zoo. It was a mining town, guys. It was rough, huh? And apart from on the milk bar, they should build it up again. Anyway, that's what they got when they did it. 57% reduction in assaults, 26% reduction in the assaults going to emergency department. Good stuff. That means hospitals, nurses, doctors, resources, let alone the troubles and tribulations later were much less. Right? Once again, this isn't publicised that much, but the reality is it changed Newcastle. I usually go up there. It's lovely up there now. They've got great restaurants and all that sort of thing. But following trade restrictions, the number of licensed premises went up 110%. The number of boutique bars and restaurants went up, more than double. Binge drinking will always be with us. I think it'll take a generation or two. My personal point of view is the role models, the parents, the aunties, the uncles, the Saturday afternoon barbecue, when somebody wins a football match, all that sort of stuff. We're going to change what the young people are seeing, so they think, well, maybe this is not a good look, and they don't feel they have to do it for peer pressure. The Australian College for Emergency Medicine did a SNAP survey. Now, this is really current. It's this year, and it was double the rate, more than double the rate of people presenting on Australia Day. Right? I did not drink much on Australia Day, I promise. Well, maybe a little bit. Got to celebrate something. No. So people Australians like to celebrate. When we celebrate it, we don't do it in a sensible fashion. Nobody's saying prohibition. Nobody's saying stop. No drinking, all that sort of stuff. No, you can drink. Just take it easy. This is the policy from the Australian College of Emergency Medicine. There's a whole lot of research going. We've got a grant from the NH&MRC, and basically there's two main things there. In other words, we've got to get much better data. A lot of this debate would fizzle out if we had robust scientific data. We just don't have it. Right? Our computer systems and what we do in hospitals just aren't set. They're basically injury specific. You know, if you got a broken arm, we really don't know if you got a broken arm and alcohol was involved or whatever. So that has to change, and it will change. And the other thing that is going to be done is when we have people in the emergency department, the patient is vulnerable, right? And the thing is, it's been shown on other things, lifestyle issues, that in that moment, just a very brief, not a sort of thou shalt not, thou art a bad person, but, you know, well, how do you feel about your drinking, mate? You know, it's a good thing, and that sort of thing. And you just have a couple of sentences and it works. It's obviously not a cure-all, but it's a very, very good start. And it's very simple to do. Okay, ice. Do we have a problem? I think there's a wild guess out there. I'm going to hit you with more stats, which scare the hell out of me. Australia has the highest proportion of recreational drug users in the world. Yeah, and repeatedly so. I mean, the big question is why, but it's a reality. Right? We're number one in the world for ecstasy per population. We're number 3 in the world for ice or crystal meth. A really, really nasty, nasty, damaging drug. Patient out of control. It's an old photo. The guy in the photo's got grey hair now, I think. Stats, right? National Ice Task Force, okay. Reported in this not long ago in a medical journal, Australia, in that article there, is that the pattern of use has increased, more regular use, greater levels of dependent use, and it's the largest number ever and increasing of people using ice. Not good. From the Australian Crime Commission, increasing purity, amount of importation, manufacture and supply. Well, you all know why that is. Ice is the most profitable drug you can make. Precursors are easy to come by. Not long ago, you just order a 44-gallon drum from India or something, and on the internet, and the amount of money to be made is massive. It's concealable. You don't need. That's the number of drug labs. Scipione reported had increased by 5 over a couple of years. It's all about money. This is from an article from Ian Webster, who is a saint. We're lucky to have him in Sydney, although he stepped back a bit. But the nexus between mental health and ice and drug taking is massive. It really is. The paranoia they get, that's why they go absolutely berserk. And when they really believe that somebody's out to kill them, do this or that, they lock themselves in their house, their family can't get them out. And we have that every day. And it's not just St. Vincent's. Rural Australia, Indigenous Australia are high-risk areas where this is just absolutely destroying communities. So, and as you see there, 70% of patients will have health issues with substance use and mental health. Okay. This is clever stuff, right? What they do is, this came out of Queensland once again this year, but there have been studies all over the world, and this is where advances come from. Advances come in technology, and they actually take the wastewater, yeah, and they measure how much crystal met's in there and all that sort of thing, and other drugs, and it must be microscopic, whatever, nano, lots of noughts behind it. But anyway, they could show that there was a 5-fold increase in South Queensland. That just means there's an awful lot more going on with crystal meth. Once again, during a 12-year study also published in the MJA just recently, it's the highest use they've been seeing in a 12-year study, and the age group is still young, from 15 to 34. In other words, these are the people you can nearly say they're our future. You know, the people who are getting ready to do their HSC, go to uni, go to trades, whatever, make a family, if that's what they want to do, and the destruction starts. Oh. I'm not allowed to leave the microphones. The thing is, being a doctor is a very privileged thing. It really, really is. And but you have moral codes. Nobody really takes a Hippocratic oath per se. It's a voluntary thing by some universities. But basically, your focus is the patient, right? And you feel and do protect the patient. So when there's an intermeshing between the law and the patient and all that sort of thing, and that is very difficult. And with drugs, one's got to be very, very careful. The law is not always very clear on it. For instance, to the best of my knowledge, if we find a whole lot of drugs on a person who's become unconscious, we have no right to confiscate that drug. That's their personal property. Only police or court orders can do that. And then comes the, I love it, I hope I'm not offending, I think there's a few lawyers and barristers and judges in the audience, but then there was this beautiful thing that people like me can't understand. They say the doctor has to decide whether the amount of drugs is an indictable offence which brings with it a custodial sentence. I'm supposed to know this little bag of pills that this person had stuffed down their underpants on the way to a music festival. You know, what the hell does that mean? Chances are that those pills will accidentally wander down the toilet or something. I don't know. They get lost. All right. This is an article that I and Dr. Forster wrote, and we've got to find, once again, more robust data. All right? We really, really do, because we've got to put a scientific basis on it, and I think everybody knows, I mean, like Commissioner Scipione said, you can't arrest yourself out of these problems. It's not easy. Society, communities, individuals need to agree that there is a problem, and they also have to find a solution. If a solution's not going to come down from above, you can't expect the lawmakers and the politicians to solve all our problems. Like the Newcastle project, which was so successful, it was so successful because it was the hoteliers, it was the community, they wanted it, they cooperated, and they did very well. Thank you very much.
Mind-boggling stuff. Well, thanks very much, Gordian. I'm sure you're all thinking about all those things we've been told, and I'd like to invite you to ask questions, but I might kick off and ask the first one. with the overwhelming impact of the data that you do have on the reduction in crime and the personal violence, reduction of violent episodes in your wards, do you get the sense that the state government, who's responsible for these laws, will stand firm and maintain the restrictive laws, or do you get a feeling that there's a bit of pressure going the other way?
First of all, it is insanely healthy we're having a debate. We're also in the age of social media, which is sort of a bit hard because it can be very unbalanced and all that thing. But like I said, unless society, communities have their say or feel they have their say, it's not going to work. There are, I went to a private school, so language is whatever. There are two QCs from Queensland who are looking at it objectively. I don't know what they're going to find, but one of the big things really is every action has a consequence. It's what we try and teach our kids and whatever. Every action has got, yes, there are people who have lost money, livelihoods, etc., etc. There's no such thing as one silver bullet will just fix everything and everything be wonderful. The debate has to be out there, but obviously from an observational health point of view, having footpaths that are safe for people not to be punched out, not to be kicked, not to run out in front of traffic. As I say, the misery from that is just undescribable. Society has to work out, do they want to pay a price for that?
Clear message there. Now, questions for Professor Fulde? Yes.
My question follows on your question. My question relates to the lockout laws. So when the lockout laws came in, there were a lot of people critique them as being quite a knee-jerk reaction to some powerful lobbying and media coverage. I guess the opposition has probably grown even stronger since then. And you mentioned before that the current model is perhaps not the best model or the most sustainable. You mentioned that the last drinks are at 3 a.m. and that public transport's limited, trains don't start again until 5:30, etc. So do you think that the really strong opposition that has been created by like a knee-jerk reaction, do you think that will become a hindrance in trying to actually develop and implement a better revised model down the track?
Very simply, if one uses the medical model, heaven forbid, but if you get sick, you and I have a chat what the best form of treatment is. Right? I've got a lurgy at the moment, I'm on antibiotics, etc., etc. The greatest weakness in all this is we don't know what works. A whole lot of things happen. There is so many things happening at King's Cross, from scanners to the lockouts to this and that, no shots before midnight, all this sort of thing. What really has to happen, and it'll take time, it'll take money, is to what actually works in that environment. And that, whatever happened or works in King's Cross or the CBD may not, well, almost definitely won't be what works in a country town, right? So that's what's missing. The science and all this is missing. And then it gets put to the people and say, this is what it is. We can say, well, if we do this, great likelihood that this will be the result, right? It has been a bit of a shotgun, right? But it was the best they could do going off in an Australian town. This is not taking it from America or Europe or whatever. Newcastle was a very, still is, haven't seceded, have they? Very, very Australian town, and people honestly did what they thought would work. And almost certainly there has to be adjustments. And yeah, and it's a work in progress. It has to be.
Right, yes. Lady down the front, please. Another regular visit to our visitor.
I suggest, why doesn't the government, by the recommendation of doctors, because you come across all the tragedy, and to make the laws which the drinking timing is restricted. Say, I think up to midnight, it's okay if person drinks. After that, it should be illegal. it should be a crime. And the similar time they have to acquire, I mean, to save lives, to save so much of expense, which is going in a bad way, which can be used for so many good purposes. And why can't we have restrictions, strong restrictions, so that people follow the law?
Put simply, first of all, people have got to want it, as I keep saying. The other thing, there are international cities, west coast of America, LA, Ireland, for good drinkers. I love a stout myself. They also have 2 o'clock. This is what I was getting at. We need to put a risk ratio. Just saying 12 o'clock, stop drinking is not tenable, right? It really is in our society, in my opinion. It's just not tenable. And the really very, very fundamental issue here that overrides everything else. If fairy godmother landed here, what I'd like to have is that people drink sensibly. That's what it's about. When people are in a venue, right, I have my RSA, Responsible Service of Alcohol, card and all that sort of thing. Nobody's stopping anybody drinking, but we just don't want people drinking to excess, getting themselves injured, getting others injured for the sake of being drunk. Now that's society. Prohibition, all that thing is a disaster, never should happen. It's just like war on drugs. But it really has to be measured, worked out what we're doing, but the final thing that'll cure all this and settle it all, I mean, there's so many cultures in the world, they don't have the problem we have in Australia, right? They really don't. In Europe, you can go into a petrol station and buy wine, liquor, all this sort of thing. There's the famous story of an Australian person who went to Paris to work, right, on a Friday afternoon. Everybody said, oh, let's go down and have a glass of some wine or something, right? A couple of glasses. And anyway, after a couple of glasses, the French people all got up and went home, and the Australian was still sitting there going, what's going on? It's Friday afternoon. It's a cultural thing, right? But in the end, we have to, there's some good things coming through. Once again, these are on surveys, so they're, once again, scientifically not that robust, but there's the best we have. The younger people is in the 14-year-old and less, there's less binge drinking than there was before. So maybe something's getting through, but in the end, it's the individual has to not want to do something stupid.
And if I could just add to the point about how the community has to want it, people have to support it, and then politicians, I can assure you, will provide the right laws. But you gave us some very good examples of how the community did accept restrictions. You gave the seatbelts, the anti-smoking stuff, the helmets. Now,
and RBT, I mean, that was a big one.
And RBT was huge when it first came in. I got people saying, oh, this is a shocking intrusion. Fancy being pulled up by the cops just because you've had a few drinks. And yet, these days, people absolutely accept it. So, you know, there was leadership there, leadership in the medical profession. There was political leadership around those issues. And you get a tipping point and people say, okay, it's a bit of a nuisance to have to wear a helmet, but really it's better to wear a helmet than have my brain smashed all over the pavement. So I think those of us in the community who believe that what you're advocating, even with, you know, you're acknowledging that each plan will have a bit of adaptation along the way, I think we should all make it very clear that we understand the public good and the social benefit, and make sure that those who are making the laws understand that we support it.
I mean, one of my personal litmus tests, I'm going to get into trouble with this, I mean, what do people want for their teenage children? Right? That really, when it comes down, it's like we try and treat patients if they were a loved one, right, in hospital. Doesn't matter if they're living rough and don't smell good. I mean, what would you want your teenage children to do in the environment they're going to grow up in? That's the big one.
It's a good way to frame it. Oh, up there, and then next this lady.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Nalika, and I'm from Seniors Rights Service, New South Wales. It's a advocacy and legal service for all the people in New South Wales. And first of all, it's very nice meeting you in person. So this is a question as well as a comment, I guess. Recently I read there is an increased number of crimes among older people in New South Wales. So is that like, and also the depression and various other issues. I'm wondering whether the data actually included in that age group, or whether there are any studies, and is that like, content, like, whether what are the causes in that regard?
I have to defer to Commissioner because I'm not aware of the data, but all these things, I mean, was it crime against old people or by old people? I don't know.
Look, I'm not up to date with that, but we do have in the state of New South Wales an excellent crime statistics function, and we will check that out, because it could just be there are more of us. It could be that we are drinking more than we should, and that leads to it could be poverty. But thank you for drawing it to my attention. We'll certainly get that checked out. Now we have a lady over here. Oh, sorry. I've got you on the queue there.
Yes, Doctor. I think what we need is a coordinated approach, and it's this. Our Australian drinking culture, I still remember, is that we seem to glorify drinking. One thing is, like with cigarette advertising, we should put restrictions advertising alcohol, look at raising the drinking age. And what you said is so true. It's not an easy solution, but we've got to stop looking even at drugs, saying even referring to recreational drugs. The whole thing has got to be a change of mindset. We've got to put. I'll give you one typical example in Warrana. Now, I went there. I'm a lawyer, and I went there. And I went to a liquor store, and they said, "Have you got a car?" I said, "No, you can't buy a drink. The only way you can do it is if you have a car, we deliver it to you." Now that sort of measures, like liquor court, has reduced the alcohol intake tremendously. I went to a hotel in Warrana, and people said, "You're gay." No, it wasn't. It was people very, very orderly. Saw no fights. They were boisterous. So it's really, I think we've got to have a coordinated approach. One thing we can do with cigarette advertising, why can't we do with alcohol? Raising drinking age. This is what we need, a coordinated approach across the board.
Yeah, that's right. Now this lady over here. Oh, there you are. You're right.
Firstly, I'd like to agree with you that what we need is a cultural change. I've spent quite a bit of time in both France and Italy. They don't have a drinking problem. And there's something wrong with our culture. And it comes back to the number of women who are killed, the domestic violence. But the question, you made a comment there, you said prohibition doesn't work. So what are we going to do about drugs? Because that is a purely prohibition approach, and it's not working.
Thank you. I hate using the word, and it sounds like I'm whizzing out of it, but it's a multifactorial approach. I mean, you cannot just use law and order against anything, drugs, alcohol, whatever. Right? It won't work. Right? It has to also be the medical model where the patient has a problem. I mean, young people don't say, when I grow up, I want to be an alcoholic, or I want to be an ice head. No, it's sort of, there's a whole lot of stuff that's going on there. And that's where we, in the medical thing, I think a medical model is a bloody good start in that, saying why people are turning to drugs, why do they need to alter reality, why do they need to take drugs and beat up their family and mothers and fathers and all that sort of stuff. Anybody who knows a crystal meth family, it is horrible. And really all the love and everything just doesn't turn many of these kids around. And there's no silver bullet. I don't think there's a machine gun of silver bullets. There is no licensed agent in any part of the world as a surefire detoxifying agent for crystal meth. A lot of work's going on it, but really we sort of don't know what we're dealing with. But it's just, there's not a one-liner, just can't be.
Gordian and I know each other. I'm Thomas Kelly's mother, so I know what it's like to live through the tragedy of losing a child or losing someone that you love. But I think I just wanted to make a statement that what we need is we need strong governments And until we have strong bipartisan agreements amongst our governments, and we're talking not about just a state level, but at a federal level, we will not see change. And cultural change is going to take a great deal of time. It's not going to be in my generation, but I truly hope that there is cultural change by the time my children have their children. And we're talking 15, 20 years before we can see this change. But without community support, without people that are prepared to stand up and have a say and say they're not prepared to accept the violence that is carrying on in our country at the moment due to drugs, due to alcohol, domestic and non-domestic violence, until we have our strength of our communities, we will not get governments to create that change. And that change has been seen. It's been changed in the smoking community. It's been changed by children not being able to drive on, or anybody able to drive with P plates with alcohol in their breath. So we do need to stand as a community. We need to force our government's hand, and we need to see bipartisan agreement to tackle the effects, particularly of alcohol in our country, because people just don't seem to understand the harms.
Could I just say thank you for coming along. You're a very brave woman. I think everyone here would feel for you and the terrible thing that happened to you with the death of your son. And we admire the fact that you are now acting and informing and encouraging people to change the terrible culture that led to your son's tragic death. So thank you very much.
Very quickly, one of my favourite hope, whatever, I wasn't born, but world wars, how did we reward our soldiers? We sent them cigarettes, right? Just think about it. Yeah, ducking bullets, and we give you coffin nails. Yeah. And then slowly, as it became scientifically evident that smoking causes cancer, causes laryngeal, all that sort of stuff, and good evidence was put in front of everyday people aren't stupid. And they realise, I don't want to take this risk. I don't know, this is not good. I don't want this for my children. And that's when it'll happen. In other words, the tipping point. We're not quite there yet with, well, we're far away off it, with alcohol, because with all those numbers, chronic, unhealthy alcohol intake rots the whole body. But the hospitals have lots and lots of these patients. But it's not, I won't say sexy or as dramatic as teenagers killing each other sort of stuff. But once this comes out, and I think this is what's going to happen, my prediction, crystal ball, in the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a lot of information which hopefully will allow the population to say, there's a better way.
There sure is. Now, I think you'll be our last question, I think.
Thank you. I've lived with a father who's an alcoholic, so I found this really interesting. As a high school student, I just wanted to hear your comment. Do you feel that we need to bring more like strong and some of those images back to, you know, my sisters here in primary school, like a stronger influence and idea about educating at a younger level, like the stronger, you know, the Department of Education, do they need to team up with, you know, other organisations to put a stronger emphasis on teaching young people all this information?
Okay, you're on the money. In the end, we've got to know who young people look up to. It's the elder brothers, sisters. If it's a male child, dad's the hero. Female, it's mum. Until they become teenagers, then they become enemies, whatever. But the thing is, and then it's the sports people, it's all this sort of thing. So there's a whole lot of stuff in there, has to be. I personally think if you go up to a teenager nowadays, a 15-year-old, I do a lot of school talks and whatever, but they're usually in high school. Hand on heart, I'd say there's very few people in there, in spite of when they get totally sozzled and smashed and wasted on the weekend, don't know that it's not really a good idea. But if somebody gets drunk, 16-year-old gets drunk, and it's all seen, and they come to school on Monday, they're a hero. I mean, you know, this is a whole thing we think, and I personally think like Healthy Harold's Life Education, who target even the very younger ones, that's a bloody good step. But in the end, it's the nearly into utero, right? The what the child is seeing, hearing, what they want to be like. I'll say it, there's very good statistics that, sorry, it's not personal, but the daughter of an alcoholic is more likely to marry an alcoholic. So what's that telling you? We've got a lot of homework to do.
Well, look, thanks very much, Gordian. You've given us so much to think about and so many directions, I think, for those of us who, from our various positions, really want to see all this change, be it the big cultural change, be it just making sure that the state government keeps those lockout laws going and maybe spreads them around the state, to us as individuals. What's our responsibility when we're with young people and children? What sort of behaviour are we modelling to them? There's a huge amount of stuff you've given us to think about, and I think we are all better for hearing you today and all clearer about what we should be doing so that those stats that are so favourable can grow and grow, and the ones that are the bad news can shrink and shrink. So, friends, please thank Dr. Fulde very much for his time and for what he does. And I don't think there could have been a better choice for National Senior Australian of the Year. So thank you. Now there's still a cup of tea or a snack available for people who don't have to rush off, but I know some of you do. So thanks. Thanks so much.